Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spin Rack. I'm here with my boy PD. PD, say what's rocking today.
What's going on?
Hey, so we saw this article in CBR, and it basically says the 10 times Marvel changed comics to match the MCU. And we're seeing a lot of that recently, right? Right, PD? And
Right.
the issue being that, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? What is your take on it?
Um, Movies are selling more than comic books, so the idea is to keep it in line. At the same time, um, there's a feeling that at DC, when the Superman movie was successful, and then Superman 2 was successful, and Superman 3 was successful, why aren't DC trying to do stuff more in line with the movie? Having him be a reporter instead of a TV reporter, that sort of stuff. So ultimately, there was a feeling like if they get in line with the movies, it could be better. Now, people felt when Byrne did it that he made it into the movie, which he didn't, but there was some similarities, right? Definitely in his Superman. So here, I don't know that this is necessarily a good thing because I'm a big fan of Nick Fury, the original one, and that was kind of like Marvel waving the flag to get people to say, "Hey, you already cast this. You can make this movie." And Nebula, since she was a bad guy, I don't like the tortured because he messed with Nebula in the Infinity Gauntlet, but she wasn't a tortured soul. She was a mean, bad, sexy woman, right? She was just like Thanos. She was the legacy of Thanos. She was Thanos' granddaughter, and that's what she sold her as. And many writers like Walter Simonson, Byrne, and obviously his creator Stern, liked her being a badass. So, um, what's the name? I'm not sure she's gonna have the X-Men outfit, but roughly that means that she's definitely gonna be in the X-Men, not the Avengers, Miss Marvel. So there's no escaping that. So
So I mean, so we have some characters here. So some of the things is they changed the Infinity Stones, right? Or they were the gems, now they're stones, right?
yeah, because when they don't want to have any sort of feminine name in their movie,
I don't know if that's it.
dude, what are you talking about? Tangled? What's the what the other? That's what was it? Rapunzel? That's Tangled.
So that's just the name of the show.
Frozen. No, they didn't want anything. Gem is feminine. Stone is masculine.
No, I don't know if that's the case. So what
It's
about
true.
the de aging of Agatha Harkness?
They
No.
turned they aged Ben Grimm's what's the name? Aunt Petunia, and now Agatha Harkness looks like the original look of of Aunt Petunia. So I'm not. It's kind of weird that this happened, but hey,
Wait. They
um,
didn't they de-age and get a hottie to play the mother, the aunt of Spider-Man in the movie?
that I don't know that they done that. That would be
Yeah. You don't remember who they did? They had
yeah. They had what's the name homegirl do that.
yeah. So what do you mean you don't know if they did it already? So I'm just
They
saying,
didn't do
just
that in the comic book though.
they haven't done it in the comic, but I'm just saying if they're doing this to Agnes Harkness, I think it's just a matter of time before they do it, and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Introducing new characters. So that's something DC did. They put Harley Quinn into the comic books, and being she went from being who was it? What was she beforehand? I lost my whole train of thought. Um,
Yeah, I mean, so you have new characters that developed in the MCU that are now in the comics. Phil Coulson.
oh, Coulson,
I think they have.
Darcy is in there.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's right. I didn't know they added to comics, but I know Layla for Moon Knight was added. So I thought she was a mountain of different characters, but okay, they're making her a separate person there. And I think in the comics right now, I think she has powers. So yeah, so it's interesting. Um,
It's not. They already had a Scarlet Scarab, so
Okay. And you have the whole thing with they're talking about Scarlet Witch with Quicksilver, that they are saying that they were worked on by the High Evolutionary. But this, and even they point out, it doesn't make sense because House of M is one of the most critical, one of the top X-Men titles, basically. And to say that they're not really mutants is kind of ridiculous. You know, who knows?
this is Nick Fury Jr.
Well, supposedly that's Nick Fury Jr., right? The son of Nick Fury.
Wow.
I think they were trying to explain what happened with why he's black now, right? But I think in the show he basically said no, he's his own thing. So I don't know, man. You know, it would make more sense.
Yeah.
Fury, he looks
It
just
wouldn't make any sense, but you can't do any cool Nick Fury stuff. Well, the thing of it is, the Guardian Galaxy was also changed to the characters we see in it, so I wouldn't give them all the credit because they kind of changed and have that look. Iron Man, yeah, they changed Iron Man.
and Loki. So here's one of the problems we have with Loki, and I hope they don't do this with Doom. Is that they've made his character, you know, a he's an antagonist. What do you call him? Not necessarily an antagonist. They've made him to be such a nice guy. You know,
Loki?
it seems I get that from the comic books. He's not necessarily bad, more mischievous than anything else. But it's crazy because the first movie you have Loki as the bad guy, but over time his being in the MCU has changed. You know? So he gave his life for Thor. Remember with Thanos, and they said you won't be
But
regular.
he cheated. He gave his life to Thor so he could take over,
Right,
which they didn't do anything in the story with.
still do. So, and their number one thing is Miss Marvel is now a mutant. I'm like, that's number one. There's so much more stuff, but yeah, I think it's kind of retconning this particular character, which is kind of crazy. And once again, I go back. You and I had this conversation fairly recently, where I'm like, where does anybody who has superpowers, where does it stop that they're not mutants? You know what I'm trying to say? Can if it can anybody get hit with gamma rays and become the Hulk, or do you have to have a special physiology? You know,
You're not hit. There's no accident happens and you get powers. That's a mutant. It's a simple concept that people don't want to accept for some reason. People that don't read X books or sit around there and complain that, hey, why are you like this and not like these guys? It's like they set it up that people don't. It's like it's supposed to be since was it is Stan? I know Kirby is Jewish. I'm not sure if Stan Lee was, but
yeah, I think they're all Jewish, right?
so yeah, so if you look at that, if you think about it like that, the idea that when people would be outed as Jewish people and that sort of thing to get the insults or that sort of thing, that was the aspect that they were playing on. That finding this person that you thought was just like, oh, this is just a regular person. Now we have this person in our midst. The superheroes, they didn't really necessarily have problem with the X-Men because the X-Men were saving the day. So the X-Men were like going out saving the day. When they have anti-mutant thing that was going on in the news, the X-Men would fall from favor. But then once they stopped whatever thing was going on, they were back from it. I think towards the Chris Claremont period, he decided that they would always be on the outskirts. So having Magneto there kind of said that they're on the outskirts. Whereas when I think, who was it? When Secret Wars happened, Shooter played it that they're kind of like they're on the outskirts, so they kind of try to separate from the heroes, which didn't make much sense from Xavier because Xavier's worked with Captain America, Doctor Strange. Like, why would he just separate from the heroes? Say we had to go with Magneto. For what? And we don't have any scenes who just, hey, don't hurt the Wasp. She beat us up, and she could have killed us if she wanted to, but she had mercy on us. So Anyway, yeah, I think keeping it in line, they can do that. They're having more success in the movies, so they're doing more stuff in the comic books, trying to bring that in there. I don't think it always
Is
works, but
that a good thing or a bad thing?
um, it would be fun to see the movie do a full on like a multiverse where Nebula is a bad character. I think you can have some fun with that if
Uh-huh.
she's the one kicking everyone in the teeth. And like, what would she be if she wasn't, slowly found her way to being a good guy? If she was the way the one in the comics were, where she has no ailments, she's gorgeous and she's just cutthroat and bloody minded. So I think it would be fun just for a moment because I think everyone likes this one we have here, so that's why it makes sense to pull her in. You doing a lot of hemming and hawing over there?
I can't. I think people like the fact that she has a sister. I'm trying to say, I think I like that relationship with the sister. I don't necessarily know if they just want to have her just to be there by itself. And I don't know if it would work without her having the whole issue with her sister. You know what I'm trying to say? That's what I think that gets it. It's the whole family dynamic. Her and her dealing with Thanos, even though she hates him and she loves him, she wants to seek his approval. Those are the type of things I think that catches them. So in and of it by herself, I don't know if that's just enough, right?
Hmm. Well, she was beat up by Thanos in the Infinity Gauntlet because he was like, "You're an imposter," but then he had her get the gauntlet in the end. So,
It is, right? So I, I agree with you, but the question is the overall. What do you think of the overall changes? Do you think this makes the comics better or not? I, for one, thinks it makes it better because it starts to align more when people who are interested in these characters starts reading. They will see these characters that are on TV, and the TV they'll see these characters following somewhat of the same format in the comics. And we've talked before, the comics diverge quite dramatically between the comic and cartoon. The characters, you know. Um, I don't know if they any longer, if they still any had longer had any type of kite, not title, character Bible for them to say, hey,
well,
can't do this. You know,
think of
this
it
is
like think of it like the Hulk TV show, right? But would you say that just because of the budgetary things, it's okay that the Hulk TV character can only lift up a car or stop a truck? He can't really leap, type of deal. Like in the comic, there's um, in the comic he can do a bunch of other things. Same with Spider-Man on a TV show, but he's had two unsuccessful ones. But no, it's interesting. Now that you bring that up, I will say that it feels like Spider-Man in the movies has slowly moved into the Spider-Man and his amazing friends, right? Because if you remember, when you watch Spider-Man and his amazing friends, they'd have an open where they're like, they'd be in their apartment, and the apartment would change over, right, to this lab, right? So in the first movies, you don't have any of that. In the second set, I just watched Amazing Spider-Man 2. It had so many emotional things in there, broke me down. But they had a lab that switched from underground into a train, and I was like, "Oh, this is like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends." Then when you get to this new trilogy, that Iron Man, because Iron Man in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Spider-Man and Amazing Friends save Tony Stark,
right.
and Tony Stark then hooks them up their apartment, and that's like late in the series. But Tony Stark is hooked up Spider-Man. Spider-Man uses his tech all the time, so it kind of feels like the Spider-Man and Amazing Friends, which had Stan doing the voice from time to time, doing the intro and outro, worked its way into the Spider-Man movie. So it's an interesting scene, in my opinion, how they got to have an Iron Man helping out what's the name. So you can have that cross thing. It doesn't have to be exact, but at the same time, sometimes it works. Sometimes, they haven't gone for a young Aunt May, but give them a chance. Maybe they could do it. Then you'll have Captain America, everybody dating her. It just turns into an incestuous thing. You can't do it. You got to keep her old. But she married, I think, she married another, what was it? She married Willie Lumpkin. She married J. Jonah Jameson's father. And I think she married someone else recently. A doctor. And then you also, for the fun, it was Dr. Octopus, which is just like, she's too old to be getting married again. We said, what do we do with her? Oh, let's get her married, But they say do that same thing for Wonder Woman. What do we do with Wonder Woman? Oh, let's marry her off. Anyway, so
I mean, they've been drawing the new Aunt May a little bit more confident, more not necessarily. She still has.
They always did that.
But shorter hair, I believe.
They cut her hair during the Burn run when they revitalized it.
Okay, so then I wipe my hands. Then. All I'm saying, getting back to the original premise, is that I think it's a good thing. Anything that makes it easier for Marvel.
Of course, you would.
Anything that makes it easier for Marvel, for readers to understand what they're reading, is a plus. It shouldn't be difficult.
You can watch the Batman movies and understand that he has not totally black costume. He has dark blue and gray costume. So, and there's no flipping out saying, "I'm not buying this Batman." He's so. All right.
Batman, you're right about Batman. Batman has so many freaking different permutations. You can't even figure out which is which.
Yeah.
Stories, but you're 100% right. So we agree on this, PD, or we do not agree?
I'm okay with it. I mean, at this time, I'm so far out of them. Like, what can you do? Do whatever you want now. They've been changing everything so far, so maybe it'll get people to come in. Anything they can do to get people to come in to it. But remember that you have a lot of comic book material to mine, and they haven't been doing that well. So having it something that easy to connect to when you're kind of like shuttling through comic book stories is kind of, you want to go to the source more, so, in my opinion.
I'm with you. And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I was reading something from the Silver Age the other day, and I was like, wow, they should have done a story like this. It was for the X-Men, I believe it was. And I'm like, there's still more stories. I know, yes. I don't know. It just seems to me a lot of the stories that they're doing from the 80s and the 90s, and you're like, what about the 70s? There's some great stories that were there in the 70s,
Well, if you think, the harder thing to look at is, say, which is a successful movie, is Thor Ragnarok, which is basically the story of Thor. Like, the premise is basically the Thunder Frog story, where Thor loses his hammer, but then he goes to this other place, which is the Central Park grounds, and he becomes the leader of these frogs and leads them against the rats. And then he has to leave because he has other things to do. And he meets up with his goats, and he's like saying, but I can't do the hammer. I'm still a frog. And the goats say, but this thing says whoever's worthy. So for maximum effect, Walter Simonson has the frog struggle, and you see him slowly picking up the hammer, and he becomes that. But that whole premise is the story. So it's like, I don't think the fans would have bought it for a movie, but it would have been a fun comic animated movie. And at the same time, this is more of a rewrite. But if you do Thor going to Hela's land and having this big fight where he ends up injured and scarred, and they leave a curse on him that happens, then you can play that into the Avengers movies where he's not as powerful, because the curse was he has brittle bones, but he can't die. So he gets hurt and this sort of thing. So he has this curse on him, and he's like, you can have him not be the guy doing the fighting. You can have Captain America do his thing, because Thor's stuff is him meeting his mother in the finale, and what else? What's the name? Then he doesn't win. So instead of doing Fat Thor, you can have Thor that's still struggling with these injuries, right? So then you have the God Butcherer, and it works perfectly. This guy's butchering gods. Instead of Jane Foster dying, Thor is in a place where he can fight this guy. He could be killed. He can't be killed, but he can be basically pounded into dust. So that shows you where your hero is, where even though he starting to put on armor so he can keep moving, but at the end of the day he beats him, but then how does he get his body back? So there's aspects of the comic that you can play. Instead of in Ragnarok, they took bits from that story I just said, the Hellas Curse, bits of the Thunder Frog, bits of Thor and Melody. So it's like 3 or 4 storyline, and the Midgard Serpent. So it's like 4 stories in one. And then the other thing is more like Jane Foster, the God Butcher story. It's like another 3 or 4 stories in one movie. Which, if you time out a comic book, it's like 22 minutes. You time out a comic book, so if you take that, you take a story arc, that's almost a length of a movie, right? So all you do is flesh it out a little more. But a lot of times they like to take bits and pieces of cool stuff and put it together. So, it's going just to story wise, you can do that sort of thing. So that's my opinion of like you what you were saying, but there's so much more to do. They're doing well, we should have talked about, we don't got time to talk about Thor 5, but we should have talked about that. But anyway, let's you need to close it out, right? Or you got time?
Close it out. But hey, we agree that we think it's a good thing of bringing new readers, new readers into the genre, into reading comic books. Anything that does to make things work out. And Petey, any final words?
Maybe it'll work now. It didn't work in the past, but it could possibly work by having things more uniform.
Spin rack
Out.